My name is Jamie Mosser, and I am a candidate for Kane County State's Attorney. I'm here today with our Kane County Sheriff, Ron Hain, who was elected to his position about 2 years ago. And we're talking about the criminal justice reform ideas that I want to bring to the State's Attorney's Office that ultimately ties in perfectly with the reform that he has already begun and wants to continue. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the criminal justice reform that Kane County so desperately needs and recently has shown that they're ready for. Sheriff Hain, since your time as our Sheriff of Kane County, you have implemented a lot of changes not only in our jail, but also in our community. How do you feel that those have brought us closer to criminal justice reform?
So taking over as sheriff, I always realize that what we do or what we don't do inside of our jail is going to have an equivalent impact on public safety on the street. What I didn't realize when I became sheriff in 2018 is the extreme racial disparity that we had inside of our jail. So we were as high as 46% of our jail population was Black, as high as 35 to 39% was Hispanic. And our Kane County Black population is roughly 6%. So that gives us a really good metric for where we have to go and have to go fast. So it's not just a criminal justice system issue, this is a societal issue. So for generations, African American and Latino people have been kept in low income areas, right? And low income areas are provided with very little opportunity for education, very limited opportunity for job prosperity. So at the same time, they've become what we call high crime areas, right? Like pretty much any high crime area is going to be low income. Not every low income area is going to be high crime. So we have, as a government, always said, well, let's send law enforcement into the high crime areas, okay? Let's root out the bad guys. And that's how I was trained in the police academies in the late 90s. So we've allowed law enforcement as a country to target our own communities. So that is where the antagonistic relationship has really stemmed from between the minority communities and police, is that they feel targeted, and they are targeted by the government because they're kept in low-income areas. So it is incumbent on law enforcement to lead that charge in bringing about reform, and that's a flashy word, right? And it lacks a lot of definition and substance behind it. But reform, to me, and what we have tried to do is bring in just a litany of different reformative programs, educational programs, mentorship programs, moral recognition therapy to help people adjust themselves who are in custody into being a responsible and productive adult, and then give them vocational training and actually hold job fairs in our jail, which we do now, and place them in jobs for when they leave us, so they return to the community as a productive individual. So that is our work inside of the jail, and we've been working to turn that to the outside so that the community sees people in uniform, wearing a badge and a gun, not interacting with them in a punitive manner, but in a productive manner, and actually helping and guiding them along. And I always reference my good friend Charles Taylor, a 70-year-old Black man from Aurora, who, when he left our facility after going through our first iteration of reformative programs, and it was led by our corrections officers, he said, "Sheriff Hain, I've been in and out of custody 12 times in my life. And this is since I was 18 years old. And we're talking 5-10-year jail sentences. And I'm 70 years old now. And now that I came into your jail under your programming, I realized that somebody in uniform actually cares about me for the first time in my life. And I'm reborn at 70. That's why we need to lead this charge. That's why it has to be law enforcement from a government perspective. And when we talk about the recent protests over the George Floyd killing, the community, the minority communities in some of our larger urban areas had a different interaction and response with sheriff's office deputies than they did with municipal law enforcement. And that came from, the word on the street is, that came from the mouths in the jail talking to their family and friends on the outside in those communities saying, look, this sheriff's office is completely different. This is a whole different method of policing and corrections than we've seen before. And they actually do care about our minority communities. So that is why, and that went on for a little bit long. However, I feel like it's important to kind of capture without too much detail of what our programming looks like, the importance of sheriffs and state's attorneys in recognizing, yes, a crime did occur, but let's diagnose why that crime occurred. And let's try and rehabilitate that person through the process.
And so it's not just enough, obviously, to do this in the jail. It has to go outside of that over to the courthouse. And those are the ideas that I want to bring. When I first became a prosecutor back in New Orleans, I had a fantastic supervisor who told me that what I first had to do on any single case was to look at the police report and to look at the criminal history and to make an offer on the case. And he said the thing that's truly going to set me apart as a prosecutor who can make a difference is then to listen to where the defendant came from, why the crime occurred. Was there something in the childhood that led them down a path? Was there an addiction issue, a mental health issue that exacerbated the situation that they're in? And he said that once I do that and I listen to that person and I change my offer accordingly, I will actually be doing justice. And that's what I did from the very first day that I became a prosecutor until the last day I left Kane County. And that's what I want to bring back again. And I want to take your programs that are in the jail, and I want to make sure that the defendants who are in the jail are given credit for that, because they're choosing to be a part of that program. They could choose to sit in the jail and do nothing and wait to the end of their case. But instead, they're choosing to be a part of something that's going to make a difference. So for the terms of our offers, we need to take a look at what they're doing in the jail and who they are. My philosophy is that we're going to be tough on crime, but we're going to be easy on people because they are people who come into our system. So we need to do this, and we need to remember that they're people, because if we don't remember that they are people, we're not going to be doing justice. And as the state's attorney, that's what we have to do. We have to do justice. So one of the things that I want to bring to Kane County that's going to go hand in hand with what Sheriff Hain is doing is a pre-arrest diversion program. And this is something that's led by law enforcement as well as the state's attorney's office, where we identify a person before they're put into the system. So a police call goes out through 911, or it's one of the directed patrols, as Sheriff Hain had explained before. And we see a person who we can identify as being in this situation because of addiction issues or mental health issues, or maybe they're stealing to put food on the table for their family. So let's figure out how we can divert them into a program that's going to get them the treatment that they need, that's going to help place them in a job so that they can put food on their table, that's going to give them the ability and the belief in themselves to stay out of the criminal justice system. The reason why I like to do this pre-arrest is so that we don't have people who are automatically going into the jail. I don't want the media to report about these individuals because that stays with them forever. I want to give them a chance to go down a different path before going into the jail. Because by the time that they get into jail, they may be losing a job, spending time away from their family, spending time in there because they can't even post the bond to get out. And so to do that, you need a sheriff who's willing to see the people within our system as people. And that's what you've proven to do since the first day you've taken office.
Yeah, humanizing the incarcerated is a presentation that we brought about right before COVID struck us. And what we did is we brought 2 inmates out of the jail, and we had them do the presentation essentially with myself and Nate Lantham, who runs Lighthouse Recovery and our recovery pod inside the jail. And it's all about bringing to light and awareness where a lot of these people in custody began their road down criminal activity because they didn't have alternatives. So to your point, we have to start viewing incarceration as people coming in on one of 3 pathways. So it's mental health, substance abuse, or lack of opportunity. And if we begin to triage them in that manner when they come into custody and then direct them down supportive programming on one of those 3 paths, then we have a panel that reviews everyone's progress. Because people don't realize how many times I kick people out of our programming because they abuse it, they take advantage of our staff, they take advantage of our volunteers and our program facilitators, and we remove them immediately. We have very harsh standards. But if we have a panel that can say, look at this person who has Maybe they've offended, to your point about your New Orleans prosecutor who said, hey, you need to look at the person as well. Not disregard, but consider the criminal history, consider the charge of the crime, but look at the person as well. And we see these people who have offended maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times, non-violently, I hope, and we say, but look at what they've done in the last 6 to 9 months in custody. Look at their progress through this productive programming, and look at the fact that not only have they done this inside the jail, but the sheriff and now the state's attorney have set up an exit program. So we know when they go out in the community, they're not just going to walk out with a bus pass. They're going to walk out with a job. They're going to walk out with training that they've received in the jail, and they're going to receive support from, if it's a substance abuse issue from Lighthouse in the community. They can continue their clinical support. So that gives everyone some safeguards, and it also builds a great deal of trust with people who have never trusted the criminal justice system before. And we're experiencing that now at a very limited capacity. But having somebody like you as our state's attorney, working very closely with me in lockstep and a like-minded capacity, we stand a chance to really reform, that word that I kind of said was too abused before, really reform how criminal justice is done, not just in Kane County, but set a model for the nation.
Correct. And that then goes into what we do while they're in jail. So a person is arrested, they go before a judge, and a bond amount is set. Sometimes that bond amount is so insurmountable because of their lack of income or the fact that they can't put money towards that versus their family, that they stay in jail. And so what happens is, while in jail, when they do this good and they take part in the counseling and they have vocational training, the whole idea is we want to put them back into our system, rehabilitated or on the path towards rehabilitation. So if the state's attorney's office doesn't recognize the good that they're doing in the jail and offer something that's ultimately a reward, which is reducing their bond amount or even releasing them on bond conditions, all of which still protects our community because we're still monitoring them, but we're doing it in a much better way because we're providing them with treatment.
And of course, we can't forget electronic monitoring that the Sheriff's Office brought back within the last year. So that gives us some additional safeguards and accountability for the system in general, but doesn't keep people away from their family.
Correct.
It allows them to be employed.
And importantly, if you look at the person who can post the bond, they leave the jail without any of these resources. What we're trying to do is reward the people who cannot get out and choose to take the treatment right away. And I think that's the better way to run our system, is to make sure that we are encouraging people to go down this path that makes them a productive member of our society. And what I've seen with a lot of the defendants that I've prosecuted, they didn't feel or think or have ever been told they were worth it. They were not given the vocational training. They were not encouraged to get schooling. They were not given what we were lucky enough to grow up with, which is somebody who encouraged us along the way.
They were simply viewed as a number in a case file.
Correct. And so together, we can make sure that we're giving this encouragement, which means more people within the jail are going to be likely to participate in this because they see that light at the end of the tunnel. My belief is that anyone who comes into our system is not coming in on their best day. They're obviously coming in here because it's one of their worst days. So we can either treat them that way, or we can work with them so that when they walk out of the jail, that's going to be the beginning of their best days. I want to provide rehabilitation. I want to make sure that our community is safe. When it comes time to the point where the safest thing for our community is to jail somebody or to send somebody to prison, we will do that. But up until that point, I want to be that change in our community that you have begun, to make sure that people have that chance to go down the path that they deserve to go down.
I couldn't admire you more for joining forces. So I look forward to November, and hopefully we have the outcome that we're both hoping for, and we can unite and begin treating humans like humans.
Absolutely.
People like people.
And so for more information, obviously Sheriff Hain has been very vocal in regards to his changes that he's made. You can read all about the policies that we will implement, and most importantly, comment on it. It is important for me that whatever policy we bring forth is one that the community is in support of. This isn't going to be the office of Jamie Mosser. This is the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, which means I want to hear from our community. So to get more information about myself, the policies, and the programs that we're hoping to bring, please visit my website at www.mosserforkanecounty.com, or you can visit us on Twitter, Instagram, or on our YouTube channel. Thank you, and please vote for Jamie Mosser for Kane County State's Attorney on November 3rd.